Thank you so much to Gomant Vidya Niketan for inviting me here. Frankly, no one can say no to an invitation to come to arguably the most relaxing place in India, Goa. Also, please bear in mind, I am coming from probably the most unrelaxing place in India, Bangalore. You know, if I were to compose a symphony called Bangalore, what would the soundscape be like? It would involve people angrily shouting at each other, the honking of vehicles, rumbling of trucks, construction noises, and general mayhem and confusion. What if I were to compose a symphony called Goa? I imagine it would have the soothing, gentle sound of waves, the rustling of wind through verdant coconut trees, the gently flowing Mandovi river, the sounds of people playing guitar and ukulele, the joyous singing of the Goan Mando interspersed with traditional fisherfolk songs. Of course, the Goa of today has its fair share of traffic woes and the DJ beats blaring from the bars and the shacks, thanks to pesky tourists like me. But if you don't know it already, let me once again tell you, entire country is jealous of you. So let some stereotypes, even if they are not completely true, let them remain. Let me begin with a story. It is a story about a story, and it is a story about a song. There was a woman, she knew a story and she knew a song, but she did not share it with anybody. She kept them both secretly within her until the story and the song started feeling suffocated. They really wanted to escape. So one day, when the lady was sleeping with her mouth wide open, the story escaped and took the shape of a man's coat. And the song escaped and took the shape of a pair of shoes and placed themselves outside the house. In the evening, the man of the house came back home. And what does he see? A strange coat and a strange pair of shoes outside his own house. Like a lot of men do, he immediately jumped to conclusions. And he stormed into the house and said, "Woman, what is going on behind my back?" And the lady who had just woken up said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And as we all know, one thing led to another, and there was a huge fight between the husband and wife. The man got extremely angry, put his towel on his shoulder, and he stormed out of the house to sleep in the temple of the monkey god, the Anjaneya temple. The woman of the house put out the lamp after a long time, went to sleep again. Now in that village, once the lamps from all the houses were put out, they would all gather in that very same Anjaneya Swami temple to gossip about the happenings of the day. That day, because this lamp came so late, all the other lamps said, "What happened?" And this lamp said, "Don't ask. This was all because of the story and the song. There was this huge fight, and that's why I'm late." Now the man who was right there overheard this entire thing. And like a lot of men, he realized his actions were in haste. Filled with remorse, he went back home. And then he went to his wife and he said, "Will you please share that story and that song with me?" And the lady said, "What story? What song?" They had escaped and they were lost forever. Why music? When I'm asked, as I often am, this question about the relevance of music in particular and the arts in general, this is the story that I answer with. that unless we share parts of ourselves through our stories and our songs freely and lovingly with people, they may be lost forever. Not just that, they could possibly take revenge on us and cause an ugly fight between the husband and a wife. And as someone married for over 15 years, this is something I definitely want to avoid. This evening, I would like to share with you some perspectives about what it is that makes music. All music, but more specifically, classical and traditional music. What makes it important, relevant, and relatable to all our lives, even today? There are many different ways to think about this question. First, I would ask you, imagine a world without music, where temples have no chants, lovers have no ballads, babies have no lullabies. Hard, isn't it? Especially in our country, where every part of our lives, from birth to death, is complete only because of music. Music in many ways is what defines us, both as people and as communities. We all have a song that when we listen to, we go, that's my song. The song that played at my graduation, the song that my mother sang to me, the song that played in my husband's car on our first date, the song I sing to my children. They all form part of the intricate web of moments and memories that mark the passage of time in our lives. Indeed, a life without music is like a body without a soul. But before we discuss the relevance of music in our time, let us briefly discuss the relevance of music in the times that came before. As Indians, we must take great pride that Indian classical music has an unbroken tradition of over 2,500 years. So what are these origins of Indian classical music and what purpose did it serve? There are two main theories about the origins of Indian classical music, the Vedic origin and the folk origin. The notes of classical music are said to have originated from the ritual chanting of the Samaveda. Starting with 3 notes, Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita, there was a gradual evolution to the Saptaswara, Sarigama Padhani, that we know today. What is indeed bewildering is that every one of the millions of songs and melodies that have been created over time make use of just these 7 notes, showing the endless possibilities that exist, waiting to be explored. In parallel, music has always existed among people since time immemorial in the form of folk music. These songs of the people have served as repositories of community knowledge, history, and practices. Folk songs exist for every stage of life, from the Bhojpuri Sohar songs sung when a child is born to the Oppari, a funereal dirge sung in Tamil Nadu when someone passes away. Songs describe various traditional professions, such as the renditions of the Koli fishing community, the Paddanna tunes sung when planting rice in the paddy fields of Karnataka, etc. Songs are part of celebrations, such as the Vanaun wedding songs of Kashmir, and tell the history of important people and communities in genres such as Alha Udal of Bundelkhand and Povada in Maharashtra. Songs such as the Ovi tell of the secret lives, desires, and struggles of women ignored by conventional historians, subverting the power of patriarchal societies to preserve their stories for posterity. These songs tell us history in a way that a book or an encyclopedia can't. Because not only do they contain facts, but they are carriers of emotions, a defining aspect of the human condition. And these folk melodies have existed not just in their own form, but have also influenced the ragas of Carnatic music, classical music, demonstrating how music cannot be tied into genres. There are many examples, such as the music of the Yerukula tribe, becoming Raga Yadukula Kamboji, or the Mand melodies of North Indian music making their way into the classical repertoire. Much like one cannot stop the river from flowing into the sea, so also genres bleed and blend into each other, weaving a tapestry of culture and influences. Over the centuries, music has grown, evolved, changed, and traversed many paths to reach its present form. In its early avatar, music was a form of devotion, practiced as an offering to the Almighty in temples. The South Indian classical music genre of Carnatic music originated and continues to be closely tied to Hindu culture and spirituality. And while attempts to democratize and make the form more inclusive in content and appeal are much needed and welcome, its historical ties to religious practices and devotion cannot be denied or overwritten. Similarly, the North Indian classical form of Hindustani music has also evolved over time. The older subgenre of Dhrupad singing is highly spiritual in lyric and presentation, but over time, the newer subgenres of Khayal and Thumri have more eclectic themes, in part due to the Persian influences on North Indian classical music. Beginning in the 7th century, the Bhakti movement, a literary religious movement that rejected the domination of priests in religious practice in favor of a more direct connection with God, had a large influence on the development of music, which is present up to this day. Poet saints from Tulsidas to the north, to Akka Mahadevi in the south, Tukaram in the west, to Shankaradeva in the east, used music and poetry to provide the masses an easier way to connect with the divine. As Purandaradasa, the father of Carnatic music and the great Haridasa from Karnataka says, Kirtana matradi Kaliyugadalli mukutiya neeva Purandara Vithala. Through music alone, in this era, he grants liberation. Over time, music became a source of entertainment for the privileged. Rajas and Maharajas delighted in having artists in their courts and serving as their patrons. We all know of the legendary Mian Tansen, among the 9 gems in the court of Akbar, who created ragas and codified many of the constructs of Hindustani classical music. In the south, Krishna Deva Raya, king of the Vijayanagar Empire, patronized all forms of art and culture. Great music personalities like Tansen in the north and Muthuswami Dikshitar in the south were prolific creators and imagined new ragas, melodic constructs, and compositions as vehicles for musical ideas. There is a story about Dikshitar and the creation of a raga. In a drought-stricken region of Tiruttani, Dikshitar was on a journey. Stricken by the plight of the people, he spontaneously created a raga, Amrita Varshini, which literally means rain of nectar, and composed a plea to the mother goddess for it to rain. I would like to share a bit of this composition with you. Sargama pani sa ni pa ma ga sa. These are the notes of the raga Amrita Varshini. Ni sa ga ma ga ga ma ga sa. Ni sa ga ma pa ga ma pa ni sa ma pa ga ma pa ni ni sa ga ma ga sa ga ma pa ni ga ma pa ni pa ma ga ma pa ni sa ni sa ni pa ma pa ma ga sa ni sa ma ga sa ga ma pa ni pa ma ga ma pa ni wa ni sa ka sa ni ga ma pa ni sa ga ni sa ma ga sa ni sa ba ma Gamavani sani pama pama gamaga sagama paga sani pasa Ananda Amrita Varshini Amrita Varshini Ananda Amrita Varshini Amrita Varshini Haradi Pujite Shive Bhavani Ananda Amrita Varshini Amrita Varshini Haradi Pujite Shive Bhavani Ananda Amrita Varshini Shri Nandanadi Samrakshini Shri Nandanadi Samrakshini Shri Guru Janani Shri Nandanadi Samrakshini Shri Guru Janani Jigopini Sananga Hridayani Sadaye Satya Sufrishti Hekavitva Sananga Hridayani Sadaye Satya Sufrishti Hekavitva Santadam Chinte Amriteshwari Salila Varshaya 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 Santadam Chinte Amriteshwari Salila Varshaya 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 Namrita Amrita Varshini Haradi Pujite Shive Bhavani Ananda Amrita Varshini Amrita Varshini Amrita Varshini When Dikshitar sang Salilam Varshaya Varshaya Varshaya, let it rain, let it rain, let it rain, the skies opened up and there was such a deluge that he had to sing Salilam Stambhaya Stambhaya Stambhaya, meaning let it stop, let it stop, let it stop. Some of you may consider this a miracle, some others a myth, some may say this is an epic coincidence. The larger message here is the powerful connection between music and the elements of nature. Just like the butterfly effect, where a seemingly small occurrence can have global impacts, it is not out of the bounds of reason to similarly consider the possibility that the vibrations of sound in the hands of a powerful master could have potentially far-reaching effects on music, on nature and the environment. Gradually, music came out of the confines of the courts of kings and homes of the elite and became a product of mass consumption. The advent of the phonograph and the gramophone in the late 1800s meant that music could be heard by everyone in their homes. This created a whole range of stars, musicians who became recording artists and exponentially increased the reach of their art. While it may be a general assumption that the early adopters of new gadgets and technology are men, it may be surprising to some that in the context of music and the recording industry in India, the first ones to realize the true potential of recording were women. Gauhar Jan, the first recording artist of India, was no less a celebrity than the topmost actors or entertainers today. She was a fearless woman whose voice and manner mesmerized Indian zamindars and British recording engineers alike. She rode a 6-horse carriage, was amongst the highest income tax payers, was a brand ambassador for matchboxes in Austria, and even spent 20,000 rupees on a party when her cat gave birth to kittens. Mind you, that's more than I spend on my kid's birthday party today, and she lived 100 years ago. Today, music is of course ubiquitous. From the 30-second ads on our mobile phones to elevator music, it is indeed everywhere. However, the sad reality is that when we think of music, especially in India, what occupies an inordinately large part of the mind space and the media space is the music of film, better known as Bollywood music. While it is certainly an important part of the ecosystem in terms of its economic and entertainment value, this overemphasis on Bollywood and commercial music means that traditional forms of music often struggle for lack of audience, sponsorship, airtime, and ticket revenue. So it is with this background that I make a case as to why traditional music is relevant, no, vital to our lives. Let me look at this at two levels, at the level of self and the level of society. Since I'm speaking of the self, I think this is a good time to tell you a little bit about my own personal story and the relevance music has had to it. As a child, my first memories are of my mother singing and teaching others to sing. Because of this, I actually thought that all human beings sing. And it was only much later that I realized that that was not the case. Studies came easily to me. I had a good memory, something essential for the Indian education system, and was able to express my thoughts clearly. Again, music had a huge role to play here. There is a significant body of research work which indicates that learning music has a direct effect on cognitive skills. We learn songs, recognize patterns, keep count, remember lyrics, all in the course of our music lessons. And these skills, once developed, are equally applicable to math, to science, and music. Let's try something. I have heard that all Goans are fabulous singers. Is that true? Let's see. I want you all to repeat after me. Sa ga ri sa. Come on, louder. Re ma ga ri. Ga pa ma ga. Ma da pa ma. Pa ni da pa. Da sa ni da. Ni re sa ni. Sa ga ri sa. Brilliant. Please give yourselves a clap. Let's go on to level 2 now. If this were a game, we have now cleared level 1. We are going to level 2. Sa pa ma ga ri. Those of you who know music can repeat the next pattern, right? Because we are creating patterns. Re da pa ga pa ma ga. Ga ni da pa ma. Ma sa ni da pa. Ga ri sa ni da. Ni ga ni sa ni. Sa ma ga ri sa. Excellent. Give yourself another clap. You have cleared level 2. Now we'll go to level 3. Sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. Re sa ni da pa ma ga ri. Ga ni sa ni da pa ma ga. Ma ga ni da pa ma. Pa ma ga ni da pa. Da da pa ma ga ni da. Ni re da pa ma ga ni. Sa ni da pa ma ga ni da pa ma ga ni sa. Pretty good. The real question I wanted to ask you, beyond your excellent singing skills, is in the last couple of minutes that you were singing, tell me how many times did you think about scrolling through your phone? Did you think of what pending tasks you had to do? Did you think about the niggling aches and pains you may have? Chances are you didn't. Because you were so focused, aware, and in the moment. Experiencing a kind of what meditation teachers and psychologists call mindfulness. This is what music or any art can give you. The ability to transcend the endless cycle of overthinking and doom scrolling and enter a zone of being completely present and alive in the moment. Thus, even the simplest of musical tasks, matching one's voice to an instrument or to the pitch of the tanpura, or repeating a phrase, requires one to pay close attention, listen, and reproduce. Many of us have also experienced the discipline and hard work that goes into developing skill in an art form. It requires hours of dedicated practice, maintaining a disciplined practice and class schedule, and revising what is taught in class. Again, these values, dedication, discipline, focus, once inculcated, will stay with us through our lives. Back to my story. As a child, I fell in love with the arts. While at that stage it was just something I did because I enjoyed it, over the years, gradually the time and focus I put into it grew. But it was never something I considered a mainstream career. The logical choice for me after high school, especially because I come from Bangalore, was software engineering. I would attend college during the weekdays, I would attend music class in the evenings and perform over the weekends. At that time, engineering was my career, music was my calling, and the gap between them was huge. After engineering, I wanted to study further and explore more avenues, so I decided to do an MBA. I remember after in my MBA interview, I was not asked questions, but I was asked to sing a song because the interviewers were so tired of listening to economic policy and comments on the latest political happenings. So my calling actually helped me land a path to a coveted career. When I received admission to IIM Bangalore, many thoughts ran through my mind. The sense of accomplishment at having cleared a difficult hurdle that not many had crossed, the excitement at meeting new, smart people, a chance to learn something. At the same time, there was this gnawing fear within me. Would I have to completely give up music? Would I have to let go of performance and recording opportunities? So fearful was I of having to ignore my calling that I made sure I packed my practice mat, my music books, and my tanpura while going to the campus, only to realize that I had forgotten my admission letter. Once I began my management education, though, I started seeing parallels between what I was learning in management and what I had been doing in music all along. And this is where the relevance of music comes in. Let me give you an example of how I began to see the creativity required for managers and the creativity required for music had parallels. A raga or a melody in Indian classical music is governed by a set of rules. And as musicians, we need to find ways to improvise within those rules and find new possibilities. There is a raga called Mohana, which has 5 notes. Sa re ga pa da sa ga pa ga re sa. This is also known as book in the Hindustani system. When I improvise in this raga, sa re ga ga ri ga ba ri ga pa da da ba da ga pa da ba da ba ga re sa ri ga pa sa da. Da ba ga pa sa da sa da ba da ga pa ga ri sa ga ri pa ga da pa pa sa da ba da ga ri sa ri ga pa da sa da ba da ga pa da sa za da za da za ri ga sa ri ga sa ga ri da ba da za ri da ba da ri sa da ga ri da za ri ga ga da ga ri ga pa da sa ri da ga ri ga pa da sa da ga ri sa ri ga pa da sa ri ga pa da ka pa da sa pa da sa ri ga pa da sa ri ga ba ri da ba da sa da ba ga pa sa ri ga pa da sa ga pa da sa ri da ba ga sa ri ga pa da sa. So this is what improvisation or manodharma in Carnatic music is. I saw that the This was very similar in some ways to the idea that managers and entrepreneurs need to create and find new possibilities within a given set of constraints like time, money, or resources. I also saw that what a lot of managers and leaders in the corporate world do is to communicate effectively, using both verbal and non-verbal communication. I started seeing how the arts are also about communicating and expressing feelings. Just changing one note in a raga can completely change the mood that it creates. Now, the raga that I just sang, Mohana, is used to express feelings of happiness and love and joy. But just changing the third note in this raga from Sarika, you make it Sarika, Gapada Sadapada, Gapada Sariga, Dasari Gari Gari Sadapa Gapada Sadapa Mere Nana Savan Bhado Irvi Mera Mane Pyasa. That Ga, changing it from Ga to Ga, just changing one note completely changes the mood that a raga can create, showing the importance of emotion in both music as well as in our lives. I also realized that in both management and music, a key factor for success was collaboration. Every corporation, startup organization has to have a great amount of teamwork, sometimes even across cultures and continents. One only has to see the work of great maestros like Pandit Ravi Shankar, who collaborated with artists from across the world, to realize that musicians have been working in cross-cultural collaborations for ages, much before corporations ever did. So my own perceptions of career and calling being very far from each other started changing. After a few years of working in a corporate job, I had the golden opportunity of spearheading the setup of a music institution, the Indian Music Experience Museum, which is India's first and only interactive music museum supported by the Brigade Group. This involved all my talents and training, my deep knowledge of music, my background in engineering because the museum was heavily tech-driven, and my management education and expertise in managing budgets of a $10 million project, managing team, timelines, etc. But most importantly, projects like these are about having a vision of a space where everybody, whether you are young or old, whether you know music or you don't, come away enriched. And the ability to be able to communicate that vision to others. Today, the IME is among Bangalore's top cultural destinations, and it fills me with immense pride to see thousands of people visiting that space. I'm sure many of you here may also have some sort of calling within you. A story or a song that's buried inside that's waiting to be liberated. So what is this difference between what is a career and a calling? I believe that you choose a career, but a calling chooses you. A career may give you an identity. A career may give you a title, but a calling gives you identity. A career pays your bills, and very honestly, sometimes a calling can burn a hole in your pocket. And yet, traversing this distance between a calling and career can be a long journey. And in this process, it's also important to remember what a calling is not. A calling is not a passing fancy. It is akin to a marriage, a long-term commitment, one that reminds you and it remains with you even as other things come and go. And just like any other relationship, my relationship with music has not been an easy one. At times, it has been like a possessive lover, not allowing me to find happiness in other things. At other times, life has got in the way. I've found other things to love. Sometimes, music has cheated on me. I think it feels like it loves somebody else more than me and has made my life miserable. But somehow, somewhere, I always keep coming back to it. It's in some ways like a toxic relationship with love and trauma in equal measure. Anyone who answers their calling needs to be prepared for a bumpy ride. So, if I were to summarize my journey, it has been about every day trying to bring these two, my calling and my career, closer to each other in a way that I lead a full life in harmony while minimizing internal conflict. Coming back to this question of relevance. One way of relating to Indian classical music is through these ideas of creating, communicating, and collaborating that I spoke about. The other way to relate to music is through the timeless messages that the lyrics share. Our music has been enriched through the lyrical poetry created by saints, poets, philosophers, and composers, and many compositions carry within them wisdom and inspiration that is as pertinent today as it was when it was composed. So I'm going to share a few examples with you of the timeless message that the lyrics of classical music hold. Many classical music compositions speak of giving up ego. The more we are attached to this idea of the physical self and of self-importance, we find it harder to let go and to learn. There is a famous story about this composer, Kanakadasa. One day his guru posed a question to all the disciples, asking, amongst all of us, who is worthy of liberation? One student piped up and said, "Oh Guru, you are so learned, you are definitely going to attain salvation." The other said, "The king of this land will attain salvation because he has ably protected all the people." When the Guru asked Kanakadasa, "What do you think?" he replied in Kannada, "Na hodare hodenu," which means, if I go, it's possible. Everyone was shocked. Look how arrogant he is, saying that I am going to go and attain liberation. Only the Guru knew what he truly meant. Na hodare, if the sense of I goes away, if my ego goes away, then I can attain salvation. This idea is beautifully expressed in one of his compositions. It says, "Dasa dasara maneya dasanu dasa." I am the servant of the servant in the house of the servant of the servant. Dasa dasara maneya dasanu dasa. Dasa dasara maneya dasanu dasa. Shresha Shiranga Nimma Mariya Dasa 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 Ramaniya Dasa Dasa Shresha Shiranga Nimma Mariya Dasa. Other compositions speak about the futility of chasing material possessions. Once the renowned composer Saint Tyagaraja was offered a huge bag of gold coins to compose a song in praise of the king, which he turned away. He says, "Nidhi chala sukhama, sannidhi sukhama." Nidhi is wealth. Sannidhi is proximity to what he loved, which was Rama. Mamadda bandhana yutta narastuti sukhama sumati yagaraja mudoni kitana sukhama nidhi chala sukhama Ramuni sannidhi seva sukhama nijamugabal maharaja nidhi chala sukhama. Many compositions speak of this idea of equality or brotherhood. It's very normal for us to compare ourselves with our neighbor, right? The other day, I was driving along in my small Maruti car, and there was a big Mercedes Benz that went right next to me. And immediately we start comparing. But then you think of some of the lines that Saint Annamacharya has composed, where he says, Nindara Raju Nidrinchu Nidrayu Okate, Antane Bantu Nidra Adiyu Okate. When you go to sleep at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a king or his servant, both of you are asleep. Mendaina Brahmanudu Mettu Bhumi Okate, Chandalu Undedi Sari Bhumi Okate. Imagine to say this so many centuries ago where class divisions were so pervasive. He says, the ground on which someone from a so-called highborn or someone from another class, everybody walks on the same road. So why do you feel you are different? Brahmam Okate. He's saying God is one. But actually what he's saying is, we are all one. Right? Nindara Raju Nidrinchu Nidrayu Okate, Antane Bantu Nidrayadayu Okate. Nindara Raju Nidrinchu Nidrayu Okate, Antane Bantu Nidrayadayu Okate. Mendaina Brahmanudu Mettu Bhumi Okate, Chandalu Undedi Sari Bhumi Okate. Mendaina Brahmanudu Mettu Bhumi Okate, Chandalu Undedi Sari Bhumi Okate. Tandanaragi, Tandanara Puri, Tandanara Bala, Tandanana Bala, Tandanana Bala, Tandanana. Brahmamukate para, Brahmamukate para, Brahmamukate para, Brahmamukate. Tandanaragi, Tandanara Puri, Tandanana Bala, Tandanana Bala, Tandanana Bala, Tandanana. One of the songs that I relate to personally is the one that deals with following your passion, which we spoke about earlier. Among my biggest inspirations is Mirabai, the saint poet who lived in the 16th century. She was a princess, born and married into privilege. And yet she boldly walked away from it all, choosing to live as a wandering minstrel, singing and dancing in the streets of Dwaraka and Vrindavan, in a time where social structures were much more rigid than they are today. While many see her as a bhakt or a saint, I view Meera as a proto-feminist, one of the earliest liberated women who had the courage to take an untrodden path. When she sings this song, Moreto Giridhara Gopala, she is entreating each of us to discover what is our Giridhara Gopala, what is our passion, for which we will say, Dusaro na koi. Moreto Giridhar Gopale, Dusaro na koi. Moreto Giridhar Gopale, Dusaro na koi. Tat mat bandhu brat, apna na koi. Prabhu tat mat bandhu brat, apna na koi. Prabhu chhad gaye, kul ki kani chhad gaye. Kul ki kani kya karega koi. Chhad gaye, kul ki kani kya karega koi. Moreto Giridhar Gopal, Dusaro na koi. Moreto Giridhar Gopal, Dusaro na koi. One final example is again from my mother tongue, Kannada. And it's a poem by the great literature D.V. Gundappa. He's asking some very basic questions about what gives us happiness. There are 3 couplets that I have chosen from his magnum opus, Mankutimana Kagga. The first one says, our body is like a drum. It's a ghata. And it knows only one sound, beku, beku, beku. Means, I want, I want, I want. He says, when will this drum learn to make the sound saku, saku, saku? Means, enough. Beku, I want. Saku, enough. Bekenuta, mobbiduta, liha, khattavanu idanu. Bekenuta, mobbiduta, liha, khattavanu idanu. Yekendu rachisidanu, bommani beku japa, sakani pudandigenu, mankutima beku, bekidu, beku bekide yenagi. The second couplet says, what are you searching for? Your whole life is spent searching for something, and every minute you have a new hunger. For what? For position, for wealth, and for fame. And in this fire, the mind is burning, is what he says. ಬೆದಕಾಟ ಬದುಕೆಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಷಣ ಕ್ಷಣವೂ ಹೊಸ ಹಸಿವು ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಇದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೊಂದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಅಧಿಕಾರ ಸಿರಿ ಸೊಗಸು ಕೀರ್ತಿಗಳ ನೆನೆದು ಮನ ಕುದಿಯುತ್ತಿಹದಾಗ ಮಂಕುತಿಮ್ಮ ಬೇಕು ಬೇಕಿದು. Finally, when will we stop? When we discover what are the things that actually give us happiness? It is said that the most valuable things in life cannot be bought. They can only be experienced. So he says, in a garden of flowers, among like-minded people, in music, in literature, in family, in silence, that is when one can experience the happiness of the universe. ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಹೂದೋಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಗೆಳೆ ಕೂಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಸಂಗೀತದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಸಂಸಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಮೌನದಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಾನುಭವಿಯಾಗೋ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಾನುಭವಿಯಾಗೋ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಾನುಭವಿಯಾಗೋ. These timeless messages of equality, equanimity, renunciation, following one's heart, and others may seem too idealistic for today's transactional world. I would argue this is precisely why we need music, to show us it's possible to live another way, where the zero-sum game, winner-takes-all model, rat race, and chasing conventional definitions of success are not essential, and that true happiness and fulfillment lie elsewhere. Finally, as I come to the last part of my address, let us look at a larger level, a community level, a national level. Music, of course, can play many roles. During India's freedom struggle, music played a critical role in creating a national identity. One is aware of the stories behind Raghupati Raghava Rajaram and Narsi Mehta's Vaishnava Janato, and how these songs became inextricably linked to the life and message of Mahatma Gandhi. While the Ram Dhun is a simple tune, Vaishnava Janato is much more intricate and nuanced. Gandhi could have chosen Vande Mataram or any other patriotic song as his personal anthem. But leaving aside these, he chose these less fiery, almost passive, devotional, traditional songs to be identified with his life. In doing so, Gandhi was harnessing the centuries-old power of devotional congregational singing, satsang, started by the Vaishnava sect of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and repurposing that same power to bring people together for a different cause. From the original repetitive chanting of the bhajan that drove people into a collective trance, the same songs now unified people from different walks of life to march to the same beat. Rather than familiarizing his followers with a completely new set of songs, he adopted the familiar words and phrases of the bhajan, but its context it was used in was completely overshadowed, where it almost took on a patriotic dimension. These songs became symbols of resistance, and when one hears accounts of Gandhi being led away to jail while his supporters repeatedly chanted Rama Rama Raja Ram, Ram Ram Sita Ram, it never fails to evoke a deeply emotional response. Music indeed has the power to make a strong political statement. And what gives it that power, arguably, more so than the spoken word or the written word, is its ability to communicate layers of meaning without being overtly threatening. It's much easier for the powers that be to put an end to an incendiary speaker than it is to manage the optics of exerting force against a musician. On one hand, music is a way to remove oneself from the bitter truths of the real world, while on the other, there is perhaps nothing that can actually reflect the real world and the multiplicity of emotions, yearning, desperation, angst, hope, the way a song can. And it is this harmonious and emotive value of music that makes it a tool at both ends of the political spectrum. While anthems and national songs serve as tools for the establishment to bring about a homogenized point of view, equally, a song of protest can be a voice of dissent against the majoritarian view. Not just in India, but indeed over the world. If you want to see the largest peaceful congregation of people, you just have to go to a music concert. Be it a World Cup match or a protest march, music is what brings people together. This is in fact the golden age of live music, where an artist like Taylor Swift has single-handedly increased the GDP of several countries, or our very own Diljit Dosanjh has taken India's soft power to a global audience. But is the power of music being used to its full potential? If music indeed has the power to influence minds, unite people, connect us to our homeland, and rise above the mundane, why is it not being harnessed to shape young minds, to channel energies in positive directions, and reinforce a value-based society? In our quest to produce the world's largest technically competent workforce, have we created a generation of rootless youth who have little sense of identity or pride in their traditions? How can we rebuild these connections with our history while at the same time seeking to build the future? To all these questions, I believe music is the answer. I would like to end with a song that I believe is extremely relevant for today's global turbulent times. This song says, Yuddham tyajata, spardham tyajata. Let us give up the sense of battle. Let us give up the sense of competition. And let us live together in friendship. This is a song made immortal by the legendary M.S. Subbulakshmi. And I believe it's an appropriate way to bring my lecture of today to a close. But before I end, I would once again like to express my deep gratitude to Gomant Vidya Niketan and all its members for having invited me here. This address has given me the time and space to once again reflect on these questions of what is my purpose, and indeed, what is the purpose of music? So, with a hope and a wish that that all of you make space for music and art in your lives and in the lives of your children and grandchildren. I will end with Maitri Bhajata. Maitri Bhajata Akhilar Jetri, Maitri Bhajata Akhilar Jetri. Thank you.